Now, let's take a look at the state of the nation, starting in New South Wales, where public servants are taking an average of 9 sick days a year each, which costs the state government $1.5 billion. Now, of course, they are entitled to take sick leave when they're sick. They get 10 days a year like everyone else. But that 9 days a year compares to 6 sickies a year for average people in the private sector. So either public servants are more likely to get sick than everyone else, or they're taking us for a ride. Something tells me public servants don't particularly need stress leave. In Queensland, sticking with the public servants, up there they'll get an extra pay rise thanks to a little-known clause buried in their contracts. Apparently the wage agreements for many of the state's 270,000 public servants includes this little thing that if Brisbane's inflation rate is more than 3% in the March quarter, then they automatically get a 0.5% pay rise. So if you're on 100 grand, that'd be an extra $500. Now, the number boffins reckon it'll cost the state budget about $170 million. I mean, it's good for you if you're a public servant, but what about the rest of us, everyone else who has to deal with inflation? And the money to give the public servants a pay rise comes from those who aren't getting a pay rise. In Victoria, the cost of keeping kiddie crims in detention has tripled in a decade. New data from the Productivity Commission shows that spending on youth detention in the 2024-25 financial year was $343.1 million compared to $115.55 million in 2015-16. That means the Allen government is now paying $7,304 a day for every kid in youth detention, which is nearly triple what New South Wales pays and double the national average. Now, we know they have a youth crime crisis in Victoria. They do need to lock kids up, no doubt about that. But how can a state like Victoria, which is effectively broke, be paying that much money to get it done? And by the way, the daily number of kids in detention in Victoria is actually 21 fewer than it was a decade ago. Just amazing. In South Australia, an extraordinary story. Premier Peter Malinauskas played undercover cop for a day, secretly wearing a wire at a meeting as part of a top-secret investigation. The police were investigating potential blackmail by former Labor politician Annabelle Dygant and her husband Greg against Mr Malinauskas, and they gave him official approval to wear a bug to a meeting at ALP headquarters with the Dygantses. The case was eventually dropped when they agreed to an intervention order to prevent contact with Mr Malinauskas or his family. But my goodness, what an extraordinary yarn. Premier turned cop. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. And a great exclusive, I have to say, from my old colleague at The Advertiser, Andrew Huff. In the Northern Territory, the Chinese-owned company that has a 99-year lease over the Port of Darwin says it doesn't want to sell its interest back to the federal government. Well, that's good for them, I suppose, but the Prime Minister said he'd get it back and he needs to. Of course, China was threatening all sorts of retaliation during the week, but we can't have strategic assets in the hands of a Chinese company. It never should have happened in the first place, to be honest, but we have Malcolm Turnbull to thank for that. In Tasmania, the state's water company, TasWater, wants to jack up bills by nearly 45% over the next 4 years. They say they need the money to upgrade ageing infrastructure, but according to the opposition, it would add $800 a year to an average water bill. Both the opposition and the government, by the way, are opposed to the bill hike. And look, I get that councils and water boards and whatever else are facing increased overheads, but so are we. I mean, they expect us to make up the extra that they have to pay, but our overheads have gone up too. Where are we supposed to get the money from? I guess you go to your boss, but his overheads have gone up too. In Western Australia, house prices in Perth are expected to be the fastest growing in the country this year. 12.8% is what KPMG is tipping, compared to 6.8% in Melbourne and 5.8% in Sydney. Now, they already went up 16.4% in Perth last year, which was also the biggest increase in the country. And obviously, people have left expensive cities like Sydney and Melbourne, and they've gone to more affordable places like Brisbane and Adelaide and Perth. But what happens once they drive up the prices in all those cities too? No doubt it's good for those of us like me who already own property in those cities, but God help anyone trying to buy their first home. And in the ACT, a potential coalition between the Greens and the Liberals, no, don't adjust your set, you heard that right, but a potential deal has been ruled out after a meeting of Greens members in Canberra last night. If the Greens had agreed to the deal, it would have put the Libs in power in the ACT for the first time in 25 years. 2001 it's been Labor, when they took over. But alas, Funnily enough, they couldn't come round to the deal. Bob Brown even supported it, former federal leader of the Greens, of course, which is quite funny. But can you imagine a Greens-Liberal coalition? If you thought things were bad now, I guess we know they could get even worse. Let's just hope Susan Lee doesn't get any ideas.